There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the Greek freak. He has been on fire lately. We have two of the top teams in the East facing off Saturday night on NBA TV.
Been wearing those tank tops before, you know,
Toronto
game started.
Raptors,
You do that about 4
Milwaukee
years
Bucks,
ago.
baby.
Hey, man, listen, you got all those muscles, Smitty. I'd be running around there with tank tops, too.
Me too.
You don't want to miss this. 8:30 tomorrow Eastern on NBA
It's
TV.
gonna be a good one.
It's going to be an awesome game. Let's talk about both of these teams. Who you guys want to start with?
Let's start with Milwaukee, man. Let's give Milwaukee some love.
All right, let's go with Milwaukee. So this is a team that changed their whole system this year. They bring in Coach Budenholzer, who's done an awesome job of, transitioning them into the type of offense that he likes to run, shooting the threes, and the Greek freak just absolutely having a year. He's averaging 26.7 points a game, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, a block, and shooting 59% from the field. I mean, that's historic.
It's MVP-like numbers, and it's been fantastic. And you look at him, we all know he's going to get those type of numbers. But what I like what Bud has done is taking the ball out of his hands, the usage, also having other playmakers. And I think he sacrificed a little bit Chris Middleton because his game has not been there. It's a little different playing that 2 than a 3, and I think Chris Middleton individually has, suffered from it. But the team has been fantastic. The two guys for me is Brook Lopez and Malcolm Brogdon. Both those guys in that starting lineup, the way they played, Malcolm's been the same steady for me, Brendan, but I think having two guys that can make decisions along with Eric Bledsoe and then Brook Lopez, the way he's knocking down threes and spacing the court at that center spot has been the best, the biggest reasons for me, the uptick of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things the Milwaukee Bucks do differently this year. That ball moves around, and there's so much shooting that it gives Giannis these gaping holes to attack your defense. When you talk about Brook Lopez, Middleton, and Brogdon, you talk about all guys that shoot north of 37% from three. Brogdon actually shooting 44% from three. So you can't leave these guys. You can't give them a crack. And then when you have a stretch five, Smitty, it's a totally different dynamic because now you have big men that are forced to play on the perimeter. Big men do not like playing out there, especially centers, and our rotations are off, and it's harder to help on Giannis and not be on the wrong end of a poster if you have to come all the way from the three-point line, as opposed to if you're guarding like a traditional big man like a JaVale McGee, where I can hang out on the baseline, I can rotate over a lot quicker than if I'm guarding Brook Lopez and he's in the corner.
That's what I was going to ask you, Brendan. And it's different. I always usually the pick and pop five. He pops back to the three-point line at the top. How hard is or how different is it having a center posted up in the corner as a defender?
It's different because I'm not used to being there as a big. We go over basketball rotations defensively every day in practice. You know that, Smitty. But what happens is you normally go over the same positions every day. If you're a big, you get used to rotating from block to block, from the elbow. What you're not used to doing is being the guy on the weak side corner that has to come all the way out or help from the strong side corner. That's not where you're used to being. And you see a lot of bigs make mistakes with Brook Lopez. They help too much because Giannis is a great driver, Bledsoe as well, and the next thing you know, they can't get out there to a guy that's going to hoist up 6 or 7 threes a game, and he kills you from behind the three-point line.
I was just with the Utah Jazz, and a huge thing that Rudy Gobert has been working on all season is guarding the perimeter. And what's so interesting, and maybe you can add to this too, Brendan, is just for him, he had the footwork ability, he just didn't realize he did, and then trusting in himself and having enough confidence to get out, protect, get a hand up, and also recover in time to still be the blocker and the rim protector that he knows he can be.
Guarding the three-point line is the exact opposite of what every true big man is taught from the moment he picks up a basketball until you get to the NBA and you realize it's a lot different now. Because they tell you run guys off the three-point line, force them to be a driver. Well, when you're a big growing up, you're taught keep guys in front of you. Don't let somebody get by you. You're the last line of defense. You have to protect everything at the rim. Extra help, over help. The game has changed so much that philosophy no longer applies when a team has a stretch five or a true shooter. You have to change your mindset. I'm glad that Rudy Gobert realizes that.
And I think trust. If I'm playing with Brendan, and obviously he gets switched out on the guard, there are going to be times because I look at Brendan, he's probably going to get beat. But I'm going to have him push to my guy. I'm going to make sure I help, and also they kick to mine. My hitting threes and time and score. My guy's hitting three, I take the onus because that's the way I was taught and played. I'm going to always save my big guy. So we won't give up the three or blow by there, but my man might be. But I'm going to always make sure it's communication. And Brendan, I'm going to come help, overhelp sometime. If the score is tight, probably not. But if we have time where we're up, I'm going to overhelp. My guy kick, he hits a three. It just changes the dynamic from the guy that understands that I'm not leaving him out on the island.
That's a great point. And I'm giggling because I just spoke with Joey Ingles, and he was telling me the same thing you just said about the confidence and the trust and the communication with your teammates. He said, for Rudy Gobert, I know it's tough for him, so I let him get out and protect the three. And even though when he gets back, I could get the block and the rebound before him, I let him get the rebound. And I said, you could still get it just for going all the way out there and coming back.
What it does is, Brendan's
he does not sacrifice.
Brendan's going to tell me, because he's a competitor, after 2 or 3 trips, Smitty, I got him. And that's all I want to hear. Whether you still don't, I want to hear that from him. And once you have that, whether he gets beat or not, he is competing now of guarding a smaller guy.
I think, Allie, to your point, that's very important also. Bigs are judged by their rebounding, and a lot of bigs don't want to rotate out to the perimeter, because when that shot goes up, we want to be in there to grab those boards. And people don't want to hear about, oh, well, I was on the perimeter, that's why I didn't get my 10, 12 rebounds tonight. They're going to judge you by your number. So I think it's great that Ingles realizes that and still lets Rudy get those rebounds.
Yeah, you want to get your double-doubles in.
You got to, man. Bigs, we judged on rebound. It's a new game, but if you don't rebound, you won't last long.
Not at all. Still got to rebound no matter what.
So also, we see coaches take over programs, and we give them 2 or 3 years, right? And then they make these wonderful transitions, or they get fired. But when it comes to Budenholzer, I mean, how quickly he's made this team successful and working in an entirely different system. How impressed have you been with how quickly he's made this turnaround happen?
I've been very impressed, just because when you're a new coach and you come in with a different philosophy, a lot of times players can be used to the old way, and it can take some time for everything to gel. But things have gone over quickly. It's been a seamless transition. I think he's helped by the fact that he has one of the greatest players in the game on his team in Giannis, and Giannis is only getting better, and everybody has bought in. Coach Bud brings ball movement. Everybody's moving the ball. Got to be a stretch five. Brook Lopez is buying into that and doing what he does. When they get other guys in there, whether it's Sub and Thon Maker in, all these guys are buying into their role, and that's what has to happen. He has guys understanding what their role definition is. That is the #1 thing that any coach can sell his team on. X's and O's are great. All that's fine. Practice, that's fine. But if you don't get guys to buy into role definition, you don't have anything.
And Brendan, I'm going to take it a step further. He's bought into his role. He had this Atlanta Hawks team rolling. You saw the record. And then I thought when Bud took over the GM and coaching, it was out of his comfort zone. Bud is a fantastic coach, and if he stays in that role, which he's doing with Milwaukee, now he can just coach. I think it was so many distractions of him being a GM and coach. Not a lot of people have done that, been successful being both. Now he's just coaching. I think he's done a fantastic job, along with what Haywood said of ball movement and guys being able to know their role and letting guys blossom in their strength. He does a good job of letting Malcolm Brogdon still handle the basketball, even though Bledsoe is on the floor.
That's a great point, Smith. Hey, coaches got to know their role too.
You got to know your role too.
Coaches got to know. Like, a lot of coaches want to shop for the groceries and do everything the GM does. They don't understand what that takes. That takes a lot. So I like the fact that Coach Bud is falling to his role also.
Since the theme of this conversation has been bigs having to get out of their comfort zone, have you ever been in a situation with a team where you've been asked to do something that was uncomfortable, or a coach came in and wanted you to be a part of a full takeover or overhaul?
I haven't been asked to do anything as far as uncomfortable, but there have been coaches that have said, hey, especially towards the end of my career when the game was changing, certain guys, our coaching staff would tell us, listen, when you rotate to this guy, you have to rotate the touch. You have to make sure that he doesn't get a shot off. And that's because back in the day, it wasn't as much switching. It was what we like to call a big-to-big rotation. So when one big was in the screen and roll, my job was normally to rotate to the other big. And sometimes that would be a stretch 4, a guy like Dirk Nowitzki or somebody that caliber. You have to rotate the touch. You can't let them just shoot the ball. And that was different for me because I was used to spacing guys out. If I ever had to rotate to Steve Smith, I was used to spacing him out and trying to contest his shot later. Guys became so good at shooting the ball, I had to change my mindset and get out there, force guys off the perimeter, and like what you said with Rudy Gobert, trust that my teammates will have my back the way I have theirs.
Okay, let's talk about the other elite team in the East, the Toronto Raptors, who are playing great basketball. And you look at just the last few years, winning at least 51 games in the last 3 seasons, and certainly on pace to do that this year. This year may be the most hype yet because of Kawhi Leonard's arrival, and he's been playing outstanding.
Yeah.
When you look at the Raptors, what will stop them?
I think for them is understanding how to be able to generate offense when you're not in a fast break or early offense situation. We all know in the playoffs, no matter if you're the Golden State Warriors or Houston Rockets, pace slows down, especially in crunch time. And I think for them is being able to get a good shot and obviously being able to have a great spacing. And also for me is you still, no matter what, got to find a way the ball to get in the paint, whether it's off the bounce, whether it's off the pass, whether it's off the cut, whether it's off the post up. And that's the one thing I want to see them still go back to that in the playoffs. Trust some of their big guys posting up. Trust some of their smalls posting up. And I think for them and don't let that adversity or that pressure build up because they haven't done it in the playoffs the last 3 or 4 years.
I think for them it's about getting the monkey off their back in the playoffs, being able to win and be confident. A lot of these guys on this team have experienced some negativity where they have great regular season, they go to the playoffs and they don't.
Mainly because of LeBron.
He's right. They don't live up to expectations, and they have to understand the boogeyman's gone. Debo is no longer lives in the Eastern Conference. He's not here to take your chain anymore, Toronto. So you can shake that out of your mindset. And then the second part for me has to be health. Early in the season, we've seen Kawhi miss some games. Kyle Lowry, he's actually out right now. They need these two guys to be healthy and playing at a very high level if they're going to make this run in the Eastern Conference. So that's what I'm looking for.
You know, we know who the best player is, and we know some pieces, some veterans. Who's the most important piece you think for the Toronto Raptors in the playoffs?
In the playoffs, I think the most important piece, it's a coin flip to me between Pascal Siakam and Serge Ibaka. Serge is playing his best offensive basketball of his career. And his usage isn't as high as it was at other stops, but he's getting quality shots. The ball is moving. He's shooting his best field goal percentage in like his last 5 to 6 years. Once again, it's because of the shots he's getting. And he brings something that a lot of teams don't have. A versatile, dynamic, athletic big that can do it on both ends. Serge can block shots. He can rebound. He can switch the screen and roll. He can dunk on you, and at the same time, he's a good mid-range shooter and a good free throw shooter. Not a lot of teams have a big like that, Smitty.
And I'm going to go Pascal Siakam, and obviously we see his numbers, and those numbers have to stay the same. He has to be able to play 30 consistent minutes in the playoffs. And I don't have to say he has to have those plus, minus, and all those numbers, but if he's playing 30 minutes, he does so much for other guys. Next for me is Kyle Lowry.
Yeah.
He has to, one guy, get that monkey off his back in the playoffs. He plays well in the regular season. He's had some up and down, as far as playoffs. But he is a guy right now, because of Danny Green, because of Kawhi Leonard, because of Pascal Siakam, I don't think the offense, as far as scoring B-Wood, is going to be that much important for him. I think more for him is running the show.
And Lowry missed 9 of the last 10 games, back soreness. It puts more pressure on Kawhi. It really tests the waters, like you mentioned. But we've seen him have really big games too this year, and the team feeds off of that. And it, like you said, it's the way he makes contact. It's his body control. It's his way he sees the floor, and the fact that he's, oh my gosh, with DeRozan leaving. He was the one it was him and DeRozan that held this team together. They ran the show. They were the leaders on the court and vocally.
And it was so hard, I think, for him, is not saying he couldn't do it, but I think having to be that second option scorer had to be, and also the guy to be facilitate and defend. I think it was so much put on him. I think right now is he can facilitate and pick his poisons when he has to be an offensive threat.
I still think he's going to have to be a little bit more of an offensive threat a better offensive threat than he has been so far in this regular season. I love the assists, 10 assists. That's a great number for him, probably a career high. But the 14 points, I think when we get into crunch time in the playoffs, that number's going to have to go up slightly, somewhere between 18 to 20.
I would be comfortable right now voting for Siakam for most improved player, if the vote was right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else, but so far the young fella's done a nice
job. There's a lot of the game is in great hands because we have a lot of very good young players that are deserving.
De'Aaron Fox has done a great job.
De'Aaron Fox, yes, he's definitely.
It's a lot of guys.
Would you compare Siakam to a Draymond Green, or who does he remind you of in the league currently?
I wouldn't compare him to Draymond because he's more athletic than Draymond to me.
Okay.
And he's built differently. Draymond is good because he has that strength that allows him to guard fives and the versatility to slide his feet with a point guard. But Siakam is something different. We're seeing his ability to push the ball the length of the floor. He's a better athlete. He's long. He's lean. I think that he offers a little bit something different than Draymond does. Both of them are very good. Siakam has to work to be as good as what Draymond has been, but I think Siakam has a higher ceiling.
And I look at it, I can't find a comparison. I don't think it's Draymond, but what he does is what Brendan said. And I think what he does so much for this Toronto Raptors team is, and people don't give him a lot of credit, if you see him get out and sprint, 80% of the time he doesn't get the basketball, but there's Danny Green, there's other guys getting open shots. And I think it opens up lanes for Kawhi Leonard, opens up lanes for Kyle Lowry. His ability to beat guys with his foot speed and athleticism, he takes one or two guys. I remember, I hated the forward that could sprint. Because I'm a point guard. When I played point guard, Brendan, I'm back. I got to pick him up and then build back out to a point guard coming. You hated that. You always wanted to play against some slower 4 and 5s, so you didn't have to do that.
Something that Siakam does very well is when he grabs that rebound and he busts out, those first 2 to 3 dribbles, he starts to break so much quicker because he's not a big that's looking for a guard. He's able to take 2 to 3 dribbles. Other guys are able to fill out and get out in transition, and he's able to handle the ball. He has very good vision, and he can make plays at the rim. So he helps facilitate that fast break in multiple ways.
It's fun talking about them, but with LeBron James gone, it will all be about what they can do in the playoffs to see if, you know, the monkey in the back is a real thing.
Oh, it is. I mean, adversity, that's when you find out. When you look at players, look at their regular season numbers and look at their playoff numbers, and then you'll get a chance to see who plays big, you know, in playoffs and pressure.
Just a reminder, top 2 teams in the East tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern, Saturday night, NBA TV. You don't want to miss it. It's just nice seeing a little more balance in the East, not just the West, not everything.
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa.
Smitty's under the rim coming up.
I like to report a crime.
Welcome back, everybody, to Game Time Live. The Nets and the Grizzlies are one of the games that we'll be talking about later tonight, but wow, have the Grizzlies been struggling. They've lost 14 of their last 20 after starting off 12-5. They take on the Nets, who have won 10 of their last 13, so 2 teams trending in the opposite directions, and you can see how they've worked their way down on the Western Conference standings. We have a lot of questions about what's going on in Memphis. There have been trades, there has been drama, there has been locker room fights, and we bring in our good friend who we can't think of a better person to bring in, especially when it comes to the dysfunction, as you were the one to break some news recently. Amari Sankofa. Amari, thank you so much for joining us and letting us pick your brain about Memphis right now.
No, absolutely. Happy to be on.
Okay, so we'll get to the locker room fight and all the drama going on there. But first, let's get to the news, which is the fact that the team acquired Bulls guard Justin Holiday for Wayne Sheldon and Marshawn Brooks, plus 2 future second-round picks. What's been the reaction, and what's your take on the recent move?
The reaction's been mixed. I think a lot of people are caught up on the 2 second-round picks, 2019 and 2020, which for a team that, as you touched on, has been on a downward spiral. They're 6-14, I believe, since Thanksgiving. Obviously, you don't want to lose any draft picks, but they did get the best player in the deal. Justin Holiday is a really good three-point shooter, which has been a weakness for this team. And it's a win-now move, which, you know, some people may say that that's where this team should be doing. Some people may disagree, but they feel that they are a playoff team, and they were 12-5 at one point, so they're just trying to get back to that point.
Question, this is Steve Smith. You know, we've had the scuffle we heard about, but from your vantage point, you've been around teams, you've seen locker rooms, and we've all seen this. Adversity happens. How have they handled it? In my opinion, just reading, I'm not there, but Garrett Temple spoke about it. He had accountability. JB had accountability. In your opinion, how have the Memphis Grizzlies as an organization and the players and coaches, how have they handled this adversity?
I think they've all been determined to move on from it. Garrett Temple, he accepted responsibility for his actions. Rick Hasby did the same. Garrett Temple, he did have a quote yesterday that kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, every team that tries to win games, plays at a high level, they deal with. He estimated 75% of locker rooms at some point probably have some sort of altercation of that sort. And in this case, you know, you have to address it publicly because it leaked. But it seems like everybody's on the same page. They're trying to move on. I guess we'll just see how they respond tonight after, you know, something like that becomes known, and now you have to kind of face the world and explain why it happened.
Brendan Haywood here. Garrett Temple and Marquez, was it a real fight? Was it pushing? Because there's 2 types of fights in locker rooms. There's guys getting in each other's face, and there's actual punches being thrown, bodies being thrown around the locker room. What type of altercation are we talking about here, and how is the team responding? Is the team divided? Where do they sit with this?
Sounds like some punches were thrown. It doesn't sound like it was a fight that went on for an extended period of time. They were separated, but some punches were definitely thrown. And when something like that happens, you obviously question what that does to the team from a chemistry standpoint. This is a team that they've said all the right things throughout the season, just as far as making sure that everybody's on the same page, and, you know, they refer to each other as brothers. J.B. Bickerstaff earlier in the season said this is one of the best groups he's been around, and, you know, of course, he is the son of a coach in Bernie, so he's seen a lot of locker rooms as well. They've said the right things, and, you know, it's tough to say how it's going to affect them, but it's a veteran locker room of guys who have seen just about everything. So you would think that if there's a team that can get past it, it's probably a team such as this.
Real quick, Amari, who won?
I don't know. I wish I do. I wish I knew. I couldn't even tell you.
You follow that team. You know who won that fight.
Yeah, just say you don't want to say it, but you know who won.
Who hit and who got hit? Just tell us that.
I honestly don't know. I would say Omri Caspi has some reach. You know, he's a little bit bigger. It's tough to say because they're both mellow guys. You know, they're not the types of guys we'd expect to get into a fight. But I mean, if there's a tape out there or something, I guess, you know, maybe that gets leaked too. Who knows?
So earlier this year when Draymond Green and Kevin Durant got into it, punches weren't thrown, but there was so much talk about how did it start? What were the words that were said? And of course, free agency had to do with it. How did this one start?
So it sounds like there was debate. Well, they had a team conversation, and, you know, guys were going back and forth, you know, just talking about some of the issues that they had been having in the past few weeks and how you get past that. And Garrett Temple brought up some issues he had with the bench, you know, just how they carry themselves on the sideline. And I'm sure something about how the bench has played as a whole, because that's been a weak point some nights. And Omri Caspi took exception to that. Garrett Temple starts, of course, and, you know, Omri Caspi is a bench player, and sounds like it just kind of escalated from there.
And then the last question we have for you is Chandler Parsons. He says he's ready to play. He says he's medically cleared. Clearly, ownership and the coaching staff has a different idea of when they want him to return. What's the latest and what's the update on his potential return and sort of the miscommunication that's going on? Yeah,
so Chandler Parsons has been healthy for the past couple of weeks. And the team, you know, he's been a healthy and active since then. He's, you know, alluded on social media some cryptic tweets here and there about how frustrated he is. And if you scroll through his Twitter likes, you kind of see the same thing. You know, he's been liking a lot of responses of people who want to see him on the court. I think the difficult thing for the Grizzlies is figuring out what exactly he can bring to the team at this time. He did play the first 3 games. He didn't really shoot the ball very well. And then at the 4 spots, you have Jaren Jackson, who's been one of the best rookies in the NBA this season. You have JaMychal Green, who's been a really good backup bench player. Kyle Anderson's getting minutes at that position. It's just a question of how does he help the Grizzlies now? And because the Grizzlies are winning games, it's kind of tough to figure out exactly, you know, where Chandler factors in. If he can shoot, he can absolutely help this team because offensively they've had some issues, and it'll just be interesting to see how this progresses going forward.
Well, hey, Amari, it was great talking to you. Thanks so much for the inside scoop.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.